All right, as I go along, I am going to record this session, so we can always revert back to it or share it with your emails for everyone to see, and everyone can see my screen. You guys said good audio, but hopefully you guys can see my screen. I did share the screen, so it should be as simple as that. So it is recording, and then we'll get to go here. So as it says on the screen there, my name, Jeremy Warner, Sage 300 consultant. I've been with ETHOSystems, formerly Cornerstone Solutions, for the past 16 years. If you have any questions as we go along, absolutely send in the questions or in the chat. Like I said, this will be recording, which we can ultimately send back, and I'll definitely share the my contact information as I do have up on the screen right now. Email's the best to reach out, or Jen or Stuart from our office as far as the marketing email that came through when you signed up for this class. So thank you everyone for joining. We'll get going here. The few things obviously we're looking at doing here is the year-end processes along with Atrix processing. As far as Atrix processing, we have W-2s and 1099s. So what I typically do is, which I'm going to do today, is 1099s, do some year-end procedures first, and then we'll start getting into the 1099 side of things, and then the last hour, roughly an hour, maybe 45 minutes to an hour, do the W-2s, simply because there are a number of clients that may use payroll for entering time and for job costing purposes, but don't process payroll through Sage 300. Doesn't mean we're going to short end that. We're just going to leave the W-2s for the latter part of the meeting. We're scheduled here from 11 to 1. So I see some additional people joining on. I won't repeat everything I just said for everyone that was on here, but point is, for anyone that joined on, I am recording this. I'll ultimately can send this along to everyone once the meeting's over from our ETHOSystems side of the group. So to begin, I just set up some notes. As you can see, saved some additional notes and some new updates going into the meeting here. But the first thing and all of these Word documents I can absolutely share and send along to you, everyone on this call. The Sage City, I'm not sure if everyone's been on Sage City before, but it is a very, very good year-end resource. And I'll definitely click on these links here. We always have the Sage knowledge base through the customer portal or partner portal, customer portal on your end, but the Sage City year-end resource links here, I'm going to click on this one here first to begin. But as you can see here, going into Sage City ultimately has checklists for timelines, payroll, accounts payable. All of us consultants definitely are encouraged and to keep up to date on the Sage City for any updates. From a customer standpoint, we have trainings. When I say we, it's through Sage, which is out in Beaverton, Oregon. Us ETHOSystems are in the Midwest in Chicago and over in Arizona, merging to become ETHOSystems. But point is, there's videos, Sage University for training. But going back in here for year end for US checklists here, right? If we go even on timeline, these links here, it brings you, as you can see, like I mentioned earlier, about the knowledge base. So think of Sage City as a more of a central hub of many different topics to bring you to respective knowledge base articles. This one, as you can clearly see here, timing of year-end tasks, what should I do and when? As like I said, we send you these Sage City links, and if any questions that we need to follow up in more detail, which I'm going to try to get, give obviously detailed information, obviously through this 2-hour meeting here, year-end class. But point is, we're not going to go through each and every single line and close out every single application across all, all applications. But the knowledge base articles are very, very helpful through the Sage City to ultimately be able to close year end. And as you see here, it talks about what order should we close. We're ultimately going to talk about Atrix processing and do W-2s here on this meeting. But as you can see here, obviously, as everyone I'm sure can attest on the call, we want to starting at our our sub ledgers all the way down to our general ledger to ultimately close the year in the application. As I go through some of these things, I will jump to I'm going to be on our demo server, and on our demo server, we're just in the Timberline construction sample data. One question I get from, there's users on this call that have been using Sage for a number of years, but I also know that there's some new clients that are on this year-end class. So I'll try to, obviously make it beneficial for existing users and new users. But just even talking about closing the year in general ledger, if I look at the sample data here for open close posting period, they have what are called prefixes. So Timberline Construction is company 10. As you see here, it's still back in May of 2015, right? But point is, once we close the period in GL to get to 12/31/15 in general ledger, we can then close the fiscal year. And what I get from clients many times is, once you close the year, and for this example, obviously it's talking about 2015, but we'll talk about present day, right? So 12/31/21, once you're in that current period of December of 2021, and we close the year to get into 2022, into January, once 2022 hits and you start processing, so you can start getting some current year, meaning 2022 financial statements. Once the accountant comes in and anyone in-house are looking to do prior year adjustments, all we need to do is come back over here to, and again, this sample data is in 2015, but point is, if this said 23/21 up top, or I'm sorry, January 1, 2022, and then this period was 12/31/21, all we need to do is come over here and uncheck 12/31/21 for the prior year. We uncheck it, so we essentially reopen it. Then whether the entry is in AP, payroll, prefer hopefully not payroll if you've already obviously done your W-2s. But point is, if you need to make any prior year adjustments, or your accountant needs to record any entries to that prior year, you can go ahead, post the entry. But what we ultimately want to do after we do that are 2 steps. Number 1, we want to go back into open close posting period. We want to close the 12/31/21 or the prior year. We can accept, and then what we want to do, which is very important, is we want to close the fiscal year again. Even though we're in January 22 for the current year, we want to close the fiscal year, because what that'll do is it'll recognize the prior year adjustment for the prior year, and it will roll those entries over to retained earnings. If you don't do that closed fiscal year after you make that prior year adjustment, ultimately your trial balance will be out of balance, because we didn't let Sage to record that prior year adjustment through the closed fiscal year. So you can close the fiscal year as many times as you need in regards to prior year adjustments. Like I said, I've had clients hesitant to close the year because they're thinking, hey, once we close it, it's done. Well, no, we just have to go through open close posting period, reclose the year, so it rolls it over to retained earnings. I'm gonna open up GoToWebinar, see if we have any questions to this point. Doesn't look like it yet, which is good. All right, so I'm going to come back over here to our Sage knowledge base here, which we're going to talk about here right now, is talking about these good questions. Do I need to install the year-end version before I print government forms for the year-end reportings, right? We need to, as it says here, we'll need to upgrade to the version 20.5 year-end release before printing 1099s. So here, if I jump back over to Sage right now, if I go, you can find your current version through Sage Desktop. If you just go to Options, oops, misspoke, sorry, Help About Desktop. And as you see here on this, here we have the version 20.5.1. The 20.5.1 was just released actually last Thursday. For the past 16 years since I've been working, with Cornerstone Solutions, now ETHOSystems, coming from Sage, they always said, like the second or third week of December. So they were a little early this year, which is great. But just keep your eye out in case, they're once people install the year-end update and there's something that's not there. Point is, they're very. This is not word from Sage. This is just me as a consultant. Just keep your eye out in case there's any additional 20.6, but there has been no talk of that to that point. I don't want to misconstrue anything. I just want to point out that right now, as of today, the 14th, but last Thursday, you can find version 20.5 out on the knowledge base to download and update on your server and ultimately your workstations. All right, good. So let me jump back over here. Like I said, I'm not going to go through each and every questions, but the point of me showing you this is just how good it lays out some of the year-end examples about different scenarios. If you have a scenario that comes up that if you have a scenario that comes up that you can't find in the Sage City or knowledge base that I'm showing you here, definitely reach out to myself or any consultant that you work with on a day-to-day basis or month-to-month basis, and we'll absolutely talk through that with you to help. As you can see down here below, general ledger, can I close the fiscal year in general ledger before I know what my prior year adjustments are going to be? And essentially, we already covered that by me jumping over to general ledger and talking through that. All right, so I'll close this knowledge base. I'll come back over here to Sage City. Again, that was just on the Sage City link, which I'll send along with the timeline here. But then US checklist, right? Then it goes into each and every application checklist for other applications. But here's the main, when I say main ones, obviously AR is a main one too, right? But here, just kind of give you a feel here, US payroll year-end checklist, and it can go through all of your different steps here. Print management reports, right? And if we scroll down here, so just talking payroll, when it starts talking about the install year-end software update, we just talked about that version 20.5. I know it's obviously only December 14th, but 2 weeks will go fast here, especially with the holidays here. My point is, if I jump back over to here, even though I'm on 20.5.1, I said I'm going to save W-2s for the latter part of this, but I do want to at least jump in here because I want to show you to that point about year-end updates. If I go to federal e-filing reporting, that's where when I say Atrix, and I'll show you how we're going to sign up for Atrix if you haven't done so already. And we're going to come back through this screen here, but what I want to point out, Atrix, even though it's embedded into Sage, Sage 300, Atrix, if you haven't heard it before, if you're an existing customer, you definitely have heard of it, but if you bought the software this year, Atrix may be a new term for you. Atrix, as you see, it's spelled A-A-T-R-I-X, but notice Atrix, if I scroll down, we have 2020 W-2s, Scrolling down here, we have some 2021, 941s, because everyone knows, right? Those are quarterly reports that needed to be set for the, for the first quarter of 2021. But if you came into Atrix, even put in the version 20.5.1 of Sage, what we don't see to this point is the 2021 W2s yet. And that's reliant on Atrix. I haven't had a word on the exact date they're going to release it. Obviously, it's not needed to this point, but you can point as, and we'll go through this today, you can still print use the 2020 form with your 2021 data. Now, when we do that, leading up to the 2021 forms, you definitely want to go through a draft mode, and I'll show you how to do that, because obviously we're not going to be printing W-2s until we get those 2021. So I'm just kind of giving you the heads up here that going in your system, that is normal, that you won't see the 2021 W-2s quite yet, but we can still go through a testing draft mode. Let's see here. Don't have any questions yet, which is good. Seems like I'm begging for questions, but just wanted to make sure that there's anything anyone had a question on yet. All right, so with that being said, let's jump back over. I'm going to come back here, close this out here, and again, back to this year-end resources. That was this one here. If you have any questions within that year-end center, definitely ask, reach out to your consultants. Also, I did include a resource link here for COVID-19 legislation. Now, with COVID-19 legislation, I'm simply pointing out that there are forums and discussions, as you can see here, out on the out on Sage City. With that being said, right, anything as far as reporting, things of that nature, we definitely want to refer to our accountants and tax consultants, what have you. For as far as legislation and everything, but this, at least Sage City does kind of point you in the right direction for some of these things. I will point out one of the forms here. As you can see, we have 2021 W-2 reporting requirements for COVID-19 pays, and there is this should bring up a knowledge base here for 2021 W-2 reporting requirements. Again, I'm not going to read through this entire thing here, but just want to make sure that everyone knows that I'm putting out the resources available. If I scroll down, what you'll see here, one of the highlights, at least I amongst other ones, but here, the box 14 other amount area on the W-2 form has been increased to allow for 6 line items. As you see here, it says these additional lines were added on version 20.3. The year-end release is actually version 20.5. Many of you on this call could be on version 20.3. So if you did go into your software, you would see what I'm referring to here without updating the 20 to the 20.5. There was a 20.4, and then, like I said, the 20.5. But what this is pointing out is that box 14 on the W-2 form, if I jump over here to payroll, I open up payroll so I could make sure I had the licenses here. But if I come over here to modify forms, W-2 forms, so this box 14 here, as you can see here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. You have up to 6 fields, whether they're, like I said, the COVID pays, which this sample data doesn't have COVID pays set up in here. And I know many clients working with different consultants and what worked best for them on their system. But point is, have their pays set up accordingly. So I know I set up save the W-2 for the end. I should kind of clarify that running through the W-2 screens as far as the Atrix screens. But point is here, before doing that, you can populate. This is what Atrix looks at for a client's respective pays that you may have set up, or fringes. to ultimately pull in, you know, that data that's in your payroll database into Atrix. So this is kind of a precursor to getting into Atrix. But again, pointing out that knowledge base article that does step you through and does talk about if you don't see those 6 line items, but you look on your system and you're only on version 20.1, you won't see those additional lines without being on 20.3. Let me see here. Questions? Perfect, thank you. I see installing new tax tables. So let's go over here. Thank you for pointing out that. That's a good segue into here. So here, as far as the tax tables, it's still in the same location. When I say same location, if you haven't used Sage, you haven't seen the same location, right? But point is here, as far as downloading taxes, if I come over here to tools, even though again we're on version 20.5.1, this does not give you the most recent up-to-date tax tables, meaning we still have to go through the process of tools, download taxes. There is an update taxes. I always like to update taxes as if you've already downloaded them. My process for any client or telling any client, or if I'm doing it for a client, I always just skip over the update and go right into download taxes. Reason being is because from within the screen, we can check this box to update it for downloading. With that being said, we don't, I don't know if, I mean, obviously taxes seems like they change every day, right? But, or week by week sometimes, but leading up to the year end, we definitely don't want to download taxes to this point. Not saying whoever asked there, it doesn't show that the asker. Sorry about that. Or maybe if I scroll over here. Bear with me here. I'm going to expand my questions piece here because it looks like it's cutting off some of the names and such. Oh, is it necessary to upgrade to version 20.5 before closing payroll and installing new tax tables? As far as, is it necessary to upgrade to 25 before? Yes. We want to get 20.5. That would be the first, when I say first order of business, right? We want to get version 20.5 on there because ultimately, once we get getting ready for W-2s, it does make sure that it can pull in all the respective data. I know there's some more new coverage codes. Don Pernay, director of ETHOSystems, emailed contact at Sage on the development side, and he was mentioning, and I don't know if they put this on the knowledge base yet, but point is they've included more coverage codes and what have you for 1095s and things of that nature. But as far as, I'm sorry, I'm rereading that question again. But for the new year, no, it's more of making sure that the forms are good. When I say the forms for W-2s, I see what you're asking there. Sorry about that. What we don't want to do is we don't want to, download this until you fully close payroll and you're done for the prior year. And many on this call may say, well, duh. Well, and I'd never name client names, but I will say back in, I think it was 2012, roughly give or take a couple of years, where the Social Security changed from 6.2% to 4.2% and vice versa. And point is, the client closed the year, started processing into the new year, and downloaded the new tax tables as they wanted and expected to. Once they did that, then they tried to print W-2s, but then their Social Security for one specific employee was not within the dollar discrepancy, and they said, hey, what gives here? Well, Atrix is very, very interactive, and point is, come to find out after maybe half an hour, 45 minutes, maybe an hour of troubleshooting, they said, oh yeah, we forgot that we cut so-and-so, we left off a few hours off of the prior year's payroll for a specific employee, and they backdated that payroll check. I know this wasn't your specific question, but it kind of dawned on me as far as the timing of tax tables and such. His point is they cut the check for the prior year to add the 4 hours on for the guy. Well, the thing is, that's when Atrix said, wait a second, that you just downloaded the New Year's tax table to 6.2. It should have been at 4.2 for Social Security. So what we had to do is go into enter checks to resolve it and put a negative, I think it was like 12 bucks or something, $12 Social Security withholding to the guy, so that they cut a negative amount, but cut them a positive $12 check so that it could be calculated correctly. Then we went through Atrix, and Atrix was fine and went ahead. So, all right. So I know I kind of answered that in a couple different ways, but as far as 20.5 before closing the payroll and new tax tables, no, it's making sure that, before processing W-2s and such, to get the, the year-end release on. All right, thank you for that. All right, so here, let's close this. Again, I'll kind of get off this this Sage City. Like I said, I'll send this, but it does have good resources there. Let's start talking about, anyone else have any kind of year-end close questions? Obviously, like I said, send in those resources. I'm going to start to jump into like 1099s, things of that nature. I know I gave a scenario about the tax table, but from a close year perspective, if anyone has any questions right now, I can absolutely address those if it would be beneficial. Let's see here. Doesn't look like it, but I'll keep my eye out. And thank you again for that question there. All right, so here, put some of these things together, such as Atrix preparation. Oops, looks like we got a question here. Oh, got it. Thank you. All right, so here, you're welcome. Bring over this question now. I can actually, I collapsed it from the meeting here, so I can actually see it more clear. I was having trouble there. All right, so for Atrix preparation, again, Atrix is the tax reporting, which many people may be familiar with, but if you're a new client, what I always say to do first, especially for e-filing, is go into this link here. You can definitely jot it down right now, but I'll send it along. But this HTTPS efile.atrix.com. Notice here I put the accounting package of Sage 300, but this is a good preparation step for year end. If I come over here to Atrix, I think I have to click control within there. Here it just brings you the Atrix website, but here you can come over to enroll. And here, if you don't have one already, you can create a username, password, verify password. The accounting package, since Atrix goes across many software packages, they don't have a drop down list. That's my defense to them, but you would think they would have some kind of drop down list. My point is here, if you just simply type in Sage 300 CRE and click tab, it'll find it here. You can absolutely type in Sage 300 construction and real estate as well, or Sage 300 CRE, and it'll find it here. If I scroll down, pretty self-explanatory here. Contact information, email, text. You have to put your EIN number in here, because we to create an account for your respective tax entities here. Then it has an employee recipient count as far as a rough number of if you have W-2s and the recipients. And the reason, excuse me, cough, is the reason why we wanted to do this first is because once we actually run through the process then of e-file, and it's going to ultimately ask for a login and password, which you'll use this login and password to e-file once we're done there. All right, so let's come back over here. Like I said, the Sage 300. Another preparation step that you can do before jumping into Atrix, which we will hear very shortly, is just through Sage 300 Common Task General. As you can see here, it's just the sample data, but Atrix will retrieve your company information from this screen to pre-fill on the company information screen. And that's simply just over here. And if I go to Sage Desktop, Common Tasks, Company Settings, General. Another way to get it is if you're in a specific application, you can go to File, Company Settings, General, and you go into the same deal there. Either way, but my screenshot shows through the Sage Desktop. Scroll down a little bit. I took these screenshots for us here. This gets into, as it says, company setup. You may say, well, we were just talking about company settings. Now we're in company setup. This company setup is if you have what are called prefixes set up in General Ledger. The sample data uses the prefix A as the company. Clients may use prefix B as the division, but point is Sage 300 out of the box, or out of the software box, if you will, there's up to 3 prefixes: prefix A, B, and C. So depending on your company and your software setup or Sage 300 setup, you may utilize just prefix A and B, or all 3 of them, prefix A, B, and C. So this company setup, what I'm referring to, is if I come over here to Desktop and jump over here to General Ledger, everyone's gonna have the obviously the setup there, but then if they don't have prefix base, then they don't have any prefixes set up in the data folder, and they would just have your account set up. But if we click prefix base, and you can do that on your system, whether you're doing it now or after this call, the sample data has prefix base using prefix A as company, but your company may see company, division for prefix B, and then base accounts. So here, if I jump over here to company, this is what the screenshot was looking at. And the reason why we're going in here is if I click enter and click fiscal settings, you can put your federal ID in there if it's not already. Otherwise, every time you go through Atrix, it'll be blank, and you can absolutely manually type it in through the Atrix screen, but it doesn't write back. It doesn't write back to Sage and populate this. But point is, as many times as you go into Atrix from year to year, or multiple times in a year, you would have to manually type it in, which is pretty quick, but that just letting you know where Atrix retrieves the fiscal ID, federal ID number. Here we'll start talking AP and start getting into the 1099 processing. Again, I have some of these screenshots. I don't think it's on this one, or actually this Atrix preparation document. Like I said, I'll send. The next screenshot, what I start getting into, is Form 1099. You could do that. You could do this during our call, after our call. But the point is here, once you go into 1099s for the first time, and I'm going to show you some preparation reports talking about the setup of the vendor and some different things. But here I took the screenshots because an update is available for Atrix. If I come back over here to the software to find Atrix, even though it doesn't say Atrix, under task and accounts payable, government e-filing reporting, I've always, when I said always said, at least always thought, Form 1099, and then maybe in parentheses put Atrix. But this is the whole Atrix about printing 1099s. But if I click on here, Notice it just went right into new 1099 report. I can pretty much guarantee, unless someone did this within the past, day or so, if you went on your system and clicked on 10, not if, but when you do, like I said, whether you're doing it now or not, you don't need everyone out of Sage. This is workstation by workstation specific for the forms. It's literally just downloading the blank forms or to make them accessible into your Atrix forms. So the first question you're going to get is saying, would you like the update now? You want to say yes. The next screenshot you get here is the forms update. We want to do automatic update. And then what you'll see is you'll start to get the Atrix updates. And I've had a client say, well, if I don't work in those states, right, why are we downloading all those forms? Well, at the time I said good question, but then talked with Atrix after the fact. I brought it up to them. They said, well, we're 100% liable to make sure that we have every single form up to date from, the IRS. Well, if they started picking and choosing, what states people are in and try to shorthand it, right, as far as making sure they got the right forms for the respective client, now their kind of liability went out the window, if you will, from their overall download. So you will see states in there that you haven't worked on, but again, these are forms. We haven't started pulling in data from your AP or payroll module yet. And this updating, I did this actually last night. I think it probably took 3 or 4 minutes. But if you haven't been in Atrix since last year, and depending on the speed of your network, that could be 4 minutes, 6 minutes. I would say tops 10, but I have seen it go for a while, but that's not typical. But point is, again, you can do the prep at any time to kind of get that out of the way, if you will, a checklist off the list. You'll then get an update complete message. And if I come back over here, again, we didn't get those because I updated last night. I could come back 2 hours from now and do that update, and it can start updating because, again, if anything changes that Atrix recognizes, it'll give you that new that download that new update. Let's see here. It doesn't look like any questions. All right, so here I'm going to close out of this one. We'll get into 1099 Atrix processing. I'm going to show you in the software itself, but I took some screenshots here, such as retain 1099's totals per GL prefix. And then I also pointed out what's called recalculate 1099 totals. And the reason why I like to give this example here is that if I jump back over, let me scroll down a little bit before I jump back over. But what I said is recalculate 1099 totals is not available via desktop, right? It's not under the tools. But if we do go into the application itself, we do tools recalculate 1099 totals. And the reason why I'm pointing this out, when I say may not pertain to you, it's good to know, and maybe even good to recalculate just for to be safe here. But point is, if I go into, and I'll explain that here in a minute, but company settings, AP settings. So right now, the data folder, sample Timberline construction sample data, up till last night, it was actually year ending date 2015 and 1099 year ending date 2015. I'll explain why that I switched that to 2021 after I talk about the recalculate of custom totals. But here it says retain 1099s per GL prefix. So what that means is if I go over here to set up vendors, and we'll go up to this A1 Electric company and go down to 1099. This 1099 amount paid, as we see here, 4620, right? But this sample data has prefixes company 10, company 21. So within this screen, right? Within the screen, it doesn't say 1099 amount paid for company 10 is 4,000. and for company 21, it's $621, right? This just gives it by a vendor perspective. But this setting over an AP, you want to ensure that your AP setting is set to retain 1099's totals per GL prefix if you have multiple companies in your data folder. If you don't have multiple prefixes or companies, and when you're in your main data folder, this is not a valid a worthwhile point for those clients. But I do see many clients that do have prefixes set up. And the idea there is, if I jump back over here to government e-filing reporting, Form 1099, a new 1099 report. Here, 1099's amount paid to by vendor or by fiscal entity. And notice if we switch it to by fiscal entity, right, we'd have to run it for company 10 and then ultimately for company 21, obviously being two different companies. And notice here the federal ID number pre-filled back from the company setup. If it wasn't in the company setup and this was blank, literally, right, you can type it in here like I mentioned earlier. But point is, then it's not. Writing back to your Sage data. Let's see, no questions at this point here. The reason why I was pointing out tools recalculate 1099 totals, you'd want to do this when everyone's out of the system, or at least when I say at least out of AP. If someone's recording a GL entry, what have you, you just need to free up the master file for AP. If you click start, what this does is, and I'll do it when I say real quick, let's just do here, start, and we'll say recalc 1099 totals. If we were to do that, what that does is it goes out and looks at all of your check records. When I say check records, I should say all of your payment records, whether they were printing checks or generating electronic payment, and then it will update your 1099 totals. And you may say, well, why wouldn't that have been the case from the get-go? And there's two scenarios. One made a client really happy one time. I think it was like 7 or 8 years ago, roughly. But point is, the guy literally said, he goes, Jeremy, I've never printed AP or 1099s out of Sage. I never trusted it. It was always the wrong numbers, right? Well, after having that conversation and looking into it, we went into AP settings. And like I said, if it was 7 years ago, we'll call that 2014. But their 1099 year ending date was like 2012, right? So they're always behind on that 1099 year ending date, whether they were behind like a week, a month, a year, right? And point is, your 1099 totals, it may take a little bit long time getting to this point, but it's very important and just kind of a feel good, right? Is that AP stores your this year, last year, and next year. It doesn't store one from 2 years from now. So point is, if your 1099 year was in 2019, right, over in your AP settings, and then 2022 hits, right, it's not. So point is with this is go check your AP settings, make sure you're at least in the current year, or maybe a year behind, right? But point is, if it was back in 2019, didn't close the year, and then started cutting checks in 2022, it's not populating 2 years from now, because simply there isn't a bucket 2 years from now. It's just next year. So to fix that, all we did for that client, and I'll use the example, is we went here, we closed the 1099 year, right? And I won't do it at this point, but we closed the 1099 year to get it into 2019, 2020, 2021. And then we went to tools, recalculate 1099 totals, and it put it, when I say it, put it, the 1099 totals in the respective budget buckets. The 2019 year, or I'm sorry, the 2021 and 2022. Talking about this year. So hopefully that made sense. I know I kind of jumped around there. It was kind of a bizarre example. It may not pertain to you, but that's the idea before doing 1099s. Always go into AP settings. And with that being said, I have clients that I've seen the year ending date be a current year, but the 1099 year back we'll say back a few years or 5 years, and simply because whoever was closing out the year did this, but they didn't do the close 1099 year, which is a two-step process. And then point is, you get into the current year, you go recalculate 1099 totals, and boom, we're back to good. That client, we did exactly that, and he's like, yep, those are the exact numbers that I was expecting, so he was happy. All right, so reason why I showed this message, literally this happened, like I said, last night. I think this is Atrix is very interactive, like I said. I put this here because what I tried to do is just do a quick run through of 1099s, but the year for sample data, right, was still in 2015, but the message came up and it said, hey, the data you're using is 2015, but the form you're trying to use is 2021, right? So it said contact Atrix support. So I did a roundabout way, and I just updated in the sample data today, is I updated the year ending date to 12/31/21, so we could get into Atrix and print 1099s here. The last thing on this screen is 1099 prep reports. So here, I'm gonna go over reports. If I come down to miscellaneous, here's a good 1099 preparation report. I know they have made changes to this. A little, if you don't see these prompts, right, or how it looks on the report here, I mean, it looks kind of like an older report, but I know they have made some enhancements to it. So here, let me close this again, cancel. Let's go back to reports, miscellaneous, 1099 prep. I skipped over this piece, but this is the same idea. If you don't have prefixes in your database, you can do by vendor. But if you have prefixes, you absolutely want to do by fiscal entity. And then what you'll see here, 1099 year is the current year, right? Current year last year. Again, another reason why to go reference what your AP settings are set on, and making sure that the totals are calculated correctly. Here, current year, minimum reporting amount is 600. And then show me everyone that receives a form 1099. Now, Atrix is only going to pull in the ones that have the vendor marked. Again, telling you something you may already realize, but I'm going to kind of make a point here, is that Atrix is only going to pull in the vendors that have this checkbox checked. And if we have this report to only show vendors that are marked with that checkbox, what I sometimes will recommend is say just do all, at least initially. And the reason why is if we do a print preview, what you'll notice, number one, it sorts by the prefix. So here's prefix A, right, company 10. But then here, it has a column receives form 1099, right? But then you could look at this Pacific Telephone, right? Number one, it doesn't have a tax ID number in there, but it does return that it was over $600. So you may want to do an initial kind of run through, right, to make sure that the vendors that are over 600 truly should or should not be checked. Because point is, if we went over to Atrix right now, which I promise we're gonna, but I always like to kind of show these kind of preparation steps going into it, is that if we were to go in there right now, as you would probably already realize, even though Pacific Telephone is over 600, Atrix, we just told Atrix, don't print a 1099 for Pacific Telephone, right? So point is, that prompt, I like to always switch it to all, even though receives 1099 is the default. First do all, do kind of a 1 or 2 time pass through to make sure that there's no one else. And then once you go in and check those boxes, then you can come through and, you know, look at the ones that receive a 1099. Now we can truly see the ones that Atrix is gonna pull up. So hopefully me going through, you know, some of those things are beneficial. Again, this one, since we did by prefix, it sorts by prefix 10. And then here's company 21 here. All right, so here, I'm gonna do one more quick thing, promise here, and then we'll get in there. But notice here, right, the first page, if we look at vendor 201, vendor 202, notice as the NEC, the non-employee compensation totals, right? If I come over here and say, you know what, company 202 or vendor 202, I'm not sure if you guys realize since you know, last year, but now uh, for the longest time, right, it was just the miscellaneous, right? But now they broke it out. The default on the vendor is the non-employee compensation, right? And then here the 1099 miscellaneous for rents, gross proceeds, and I know there's a few different other reasons uh, for vendors to receive the miscellaneous. So here, if we mark this guy as a miscellaneous, close miscellaneous 1099 prep, do by fiscal entity, and we'll put in the 600. So notice here, so prefix A, here's 201. This one shows non-employee compensation. Now if I go to next page, still company 10, right? But this one shows the 1099 miscellaneous total, right? It went away from this page because there's a page break when I say whoever wrote this report from Sage. I know that they've made, like, that was my point, they've made enhancements to this report in the past couple of years. Point is, so now, right, company 10, non-employee compensation, again, second page, company 10, right? And then here's the miscellaneous totals, because we have the miscellaneous forms and now the NECs. Any questions on that, or is that hopefully beneficial? All right, so once we have all that set and you're rearing to go, now we come back over here and let's run through a 1099 processing here. New 1099 report, we click next. Again, since I said multiple times, if you have the entities or prefixes set up, here are your prefixes that you'll have to run, you know, one by one for those reporting entities. Here's the form 1099 NEC for the reporting year. Again, I had to switch AP 1099 to 2021. And frankly, that's why I didn't actually do the recalculate totals, because I know those check dates, right? The check dates are back in 2015 in sample data. And since I updated the year in AP settings to 2021, if I recalculated through tools recalculate custom totals, we wouldn't see any totals on this on our year-end class here. So that's why I didn't actually follow through on that piece, but I did want to point it out. But here's our federal ID number, minimum reporting requirement, the $600. We click next. And right here, we only have the the one vendor. If I come back, maybe let's switch it to company 21, right? Click next. Here we have, at least we can look at a few more than just one, right? So here, all of them are checked. If you find yourself unchecking things, that means that we didn't, mark the vendors accordingly. So that's the whole idea, that we want to do that whole prep, leave all these checked, click next. Here it's going to generate the form 1099. Since there was only 6 and this is the sample data, your system, scrolling through that may take, more than 20 seconds. That may take 2 to 3 minutes, depending on the number of recipients you have. What you could do, leaving this call, if you haven't done this before in the past, you can do the test drive of all your recipients. I would recommend that if you haven't done Atrix before. Point is, all of it won't e-file anything to the federal government, as you hope, right? We're in a test drive, so it won't prompt you to log in. It will actually test your login. Once you get to the last step, it'll pop up a login, and it'll give a message, and it'll say, this is not going to be e-filed. You're in draft mode or test drive mode. But here you can type in your Atrix login and password to make sure that you have it handy, right, before actually processing them. We're going to cut to the chase, and actually for this call, do no thanks. We're going to start processing 1099s, but you can absolutely do this. And if you do print the copies to paper, there will be a watermark that will say draft on them. And again, it won't e-file, but test drive is definitely worthwhile. And another reason for the test drive, here I'm going to click next. There's our tax ID number that I made up. But here, for AP 1099 purposes, I can't think of a client off the top of my head that has separate AP data folders. Not saying that they don't exist, or maybe I've worked with one in the past 16 years, but nothing comes to mind. When you start talking W-2s, that we're going to get the same question, and definitely have many clients that have broken out payroll files, meaning if they broke out maybe their office employees in a separate office data folder, but then in their main data folder they have all the field employees. What's nice there for 1099s as well, but what it'll do is it will merge those tables together. When I say those tables together, so then you could do one W-2 processing file, rather than in years past where you had to start moving employees from one data folder to the next. Atrix said, hey, we have a tool to merge those together into one W-2 filing. But for 1099s, unless anyone on this call has separate AP, we can always follow up and kind of talk through that and go through the AP side of things. But like I said, I can't think of anyone on the 1099 AP side that has multiple 1099 data files. Here, as I mentioned earlier, it pulls from the file company settings under general. If it didn't, well, when I say if it didn't, you can absolutely type it in here. It just does not write back to Sage. Here we can put the contact name and additional information to print, whether it's on the 1096 or 1099, 1096 or W3 for payroll. But here I'm just going to click next. Now it's starting to talk about required fields here, right? So then again, if you have this filled out, I'll put Chicago 446 you have that filled out, then we're not typing that in every single time. Such as this here. Let's put in my number. So like I said, Atrix is interactive and shows you what is required in order to file. Here we're filing for our company employer. Do you have any recipients who elected to only receive 1099 forms electronically? Here, if you say yes, where that's going to ultimately look at is if I go into set up vendors. I'm not sure if she's on this call, but I just had a conversation last week with a client, and point is looking, populating the email addresses, right, on all the vendors as another preparation step of doing 1099s. Now, you're not required to obviously email the vendors. We're required to e-file to the federal government. But point is, if you want, you can have Atrix. What Atrix will do, and we're almost there in a couple screens. Pay them, and then they can email through a secure link and send your vendors their 1099s. So here, if I come back over here, I'll say yes, but point is, if you don't want to send them electronically, you can just say no there. I'll say next. Click next. Here, how you want their federal ID numbers to print. This is entirely up to you. I don't have even if I had a recommendation, right? That would be up to you here. But typically I see, with the masked, especially on the payroll side of things, this is kind of the same, the same screen you'd see over on the payroll W-2s. But if vendors are doing business as and they have their social security number instead of their federal ID number, that may be a reason enough to, mask it there. All right, so here, now it retrieved all the the data from Sage for that respective company. If you do have the doing business as, you'll see those recipients' first and last name in there. I should point out, let's go back over if anyone hasn't seen it before, but if I go to set up vendors over here in 1099 settings, here's the recipient's tax ID name, right? The doing business as. If you need to put in their social security number with that recipient's tax ID name. So we'll close that, just showing you right now in the sample data, we don't have any set, but that's where it would retrieve. Here it shows all the tax ID numbers. If a vendor didn't have it on there, on that vendor, right? And again, we talked about doing the prep report, looking at that, kind of doing your due diligence, but for whatever reason, anything slips through the crack here. The reason why I'm taking that out is simply if I click next, again, Atrix is very interactive. It says, hold on, we can't be doing these 1099s without a tax ID number as you would hope, but point is, Atrix is nice enough to do that. Now here, obviously that vendor has the tax ID number, it pre-filled, I just took it out for the example. Anything that you type in here, and I know I've said this a few different times, a few different ways, anything you type in here, or if you look at this, and this A1 Electric Company for their 1099 purposes needed to be, Inc. or LLC, right? Obviously you'd want to go update the vendor record, but point is this right here will still print on your 1099s, but won't write back to Sage. All right, so here there's a scroll bar down below, right? You can start looking at all the information. None of these are marked as an electronic 1099, even though I did click yes in that message about are they going to receive them electronically. Let's go back over here. Where is it at here? Right here. And you know what? I actually misspoke. Sorry. So earlier when I was saying, sorry about that. Here I was saying about the general for the contact one. Here, this is the email address where we want it there. It's separate from the contact one. So I apologize for that. But glad we went through that here. So here, electronic, and that's who we're sending that to, because then you may have two different, contacts, but your 1099 goes to someone else. There is ways, whether it's a Office connector, TS Write, or you could even use Microsoft Access if you say, hey, this email on contact one for the number of years, right? That's the one I want to go to the 1099 and you want to update, let's say you have contact one email address on all your vendors. You can get with your consultant, which is me, or another, consultant that you work with, and look at doing kind of a massive data, essentially copy and paste in through a write feature to get those populated, rather than, manually keying them in. All right, so here, if I come back over here, we'll click next. Next, and again, Atrix is doing its verification of data. You'll start seeing these messages pop up. I tell all clients since Atrix came around, us as ETHOSystems, and which includes me, we don't receive a penny. We don't, nor have we asked, nor do we want it, right? I mean, we all want money, but point is, we don't receive a penny for this complete 1099 e-filing service. This literally goes through your login with, Atrix, separate from us. Obviously, we have a good working relationship with Atrix. I have their support number. I've always had great success with them, knock on wood, right? Going through things. But point is, here, I've had a client, I think it was we'll call it a dozen years ago when Atrix first came around. Maybe it was a little longer than that, but I've been doing this 16 years. Came, I think, a few years after I started. But point is, people were hesitant to say, wait, why is it charging us money, right? So I said, well, you can go over here to other options. You can print all your 1099s, right? You can print your federal and state, right? Obviously, it goes up, right? This sample date only has 6. So even if that subtotal, right, was, when I say $200-300, that's not me saying, oh, it's a no-brainer, but I kind of am, respective to how long it would take to print them out, get stamps, right, or email them these days, right? Because you can do this, when I say for free. Watch if I uncheck the e-file. I think it pops up here. Yeah. Even the past year or so, right, or year and a half, whatever it's been, given the impact of COVID-19, now state agencies are saying, hey, you must submit their returns electronically, right, to eliminate likely delays and paper returns. So if you do electronically, right, you're getting down here, now you're nickel and diamond, right? So my point is, I've had a client 12 years ago that they were like, no, I want to print them out. I want to, anyone on this call, if you want to hand them out, or if you want to send them out, that's not me judging you by any stretch of the imagination. I just see more and more, especially even, like I said, 12 years ago, client said, no, I want to print them out. Literally the following year, she said, Jeremy, what was I thinking? Why didn't I do that? And obviously, a little laugh about it, right? And then ever since, they've been doing the complete e-filing service. But here, as it says, it'll file your federal 1099s. And even here, if you don't do the electronic ones, when I say it, Atrix, they print them and they stamp them and they send them out to the vendors. So even doing this complete e-filing service without going down here, Atrix will send them out. So they're still getting a physical copy, but you're not having to, print them out on your side. All right, so here, with all that being said, let's click next. PDF archive, I'm not aware of a client that prints a PDF archive for $24.95 if you, or now it's $34.95, I think it was. Allows you instantly access to your W-2s and only instant access to your, for only $34.95. Yeah, I'm not aware of any clients, nor have I recommended printing that PDF archive, and the main reason is because I'm not going to cancel it out of that screen that we were just in. But if you came in here and when we did the 1099s or and W-2s here, point is it asks us for a new report or a saved report. So even by not doing this, if you went into saved report, you could literally go through the same exact steps. It saves your file, and you could reprint from there. So you have access to reprinting and things of that nature on your system without doing a PDF archive. All right, so here, if I click next, it'll find the respective state. Here, we're not connected to a printer here. Obviously, we're all meeting remotely, and I'm connected to our demo server. But point is, if you print this, if you want your local copy, right, for your filing cabinet or anything of that nature, point is, look at this as more of a cover page. So I would recommend it, just for your own filing. But literally the words you see there is kind of more of an audit trail of telling you what you did the prior year for your paper copy. And you'll be able to see that in that saved reports if you decide, hey, I'm done with paper, you have it in saved reports. So I'm going to start clicking through here. Everyone has seen 1096s, gives you the number of accounts, right? Here's the title, right, with my name in there. The one page here, if you did the print copy, the reason why it's saying print copy and not print final is because when I click through this, I did do the complete filing service. So essentially, when I say essentially, Atrix is sending this through. So this is printing a copy for your own records. If you don't print copy and just simply click next step, again, it's saved in the Atrix file, and I'll show you where we can retrieve that. But as we all could imagine, right? Print copy, tell it the printer, click OK, and print that to paper if you want a physical copy. Up top, it says report 2 of 2, or I'm sorry, 2 of 2, 2 of 5. And now it starts walking us through here. The 4 up, if you don't have Atrix, run and send them for you, or print and send them for you, and you do want to print them, you make sure you want to get the four part perforated blank of your 1099s. Point is, Atrix will print exactly what you see here, meaning it will print the horizontal and the grid lines and such. Because if you bought a pre-printed 1099, now these lines are going to print to pre-printed lines, and now it's like either doubled line, depending on where you put those in the printer, things of that nature, or more bolded. So make sure it's blank 4 part up. So here we'll click next. Not going to print them now. Here we are. Here's the 1099, the federal copy, which again Atrix will send along as well. Up here in the upper left, you have the arrow to scroll through, but we saw it on the main grid. We'll click next step. And here's your 1096 that Atrix will send along as well. Again, print a copy. Next step, no. And this last one here is the Illinois. This being in Illinois here, Illinois copy. All right, so then once you print those copies, if you so choose, or if you're printing them out yourself, print in the final. Notice here, I don't have a username or password. Obviously, I'm not I don't pay subs myself. My point is, at this point, Atrix is coming up, and this will ask you for your username and password. Once you click log in, then it'll say $24.95 or $245 or whatever your amount was, and you can put a credit card in there. You can have it save your credit card information, or if you say don't save it and just make sure you type it in every time, literally log in, pay it, and you'll get a message that it'll email you the AFID number, which is the Atrix Federal Identification Number. And then point is, then you'll get that email, and I've seen that email come through within a few minutes. I'm just going to say not enrolled because it says, hey, why'd you stop on me? E-file was canceled or failed. Do you want to try again later? I'm just going to say no. And now we're closing out. But point is, that would close out of your Atrix processing. You'd get that email, and then you could come back to I think we still have it open. At any time, you can come in here to the login, enter your username, log in, and you'll see all of your filings at what state they're in. Whether they're, when I say state, are they processing? Have they been submitted? Have they been accepted? Things of that nature. But you will get email updates. But you can also log in to see all of your prior filings. All right, so here, close out of that. We got about 42 minutes. The last 42 minutes was going to cover W-2s, unless, does anyone have any questions to what we have to this point, or any kind of year-end questions? And then, like I said, then we'll just do all W-2s. I see someone raise their hand. So unfortunately, when I say unfortunately, I don't know if you were on at the very start, but if you could put your question in the questions, I'm gonna have to check with our office because I have a second and third year-end class in a couple next week, I think, and then one in January. But you guys are on listen only mode, and that's not because I didn't want to hear from you. I did. It's good. It's good to actually hear voices, right? When you're talking for 2 hours straight. But I think I saw a hand up over on the webinar questions, or even in the chat for that matter. If you throw that out there, I'll absolutely. I think I saw someone's hand up. I don't think that was from earlier. But I'll start on the W-2s, but then I can definitely jump back to that if you can throw that. You may be typing while I'm asking you to. So, all right. So here, payroll. I did create a few, or maybe one payroll. Where is that? W-2 Atrix preparation. So really, this is that preparation is actually what I brought up on the kind of towards the beginning of the call, but I'll just kind of say it here, that in modified forms on version 20.3 version 20.3 of Sage, like I said, the year end is 20.5. 20.3 allowed it for up to 6 lines for your box 14. And with that, if I come back over here just real quick, under tools, that's located under modify forms, W-2 forms. So even though we're going to go into Atrix and payroll is for W-2s is federal e-filing and reporting, Atrix still looks at modify forms, W-2 forms. typically, right, we only have one W-2 form. I have seen clients that may make a new W-2 form based on the given year. That's definitely okay. No harm at that. It doesn't require that, but if you, for whatever reason, said, hey, we have a W-2 form for 2018, 2019, 2020, because then you can kind of eyeball, if you will, what fields you brought in for the respective year. That could be a benefit, but point is, it only needs one form. And here, if we do the penny for the employee minimum, again, box 14, we're coming in here, and I do see a question here. So we have around 300 prefixes, different FEIN numbers. Do I have to go through Atrix, set up for every single prefix? Is there a quicker way, maybe a macro or something? Very good question. Yeah, it is one by, since they are different separate federal ID numbers. I mean, as far as the macros, like I said, doing this 16 years, and definitely have done a lot with macros, or even using other consultant helps with their office connector. Point is, definitely I do respect and understand that macro question, but via Atrix, I can say with certainty that there's not, because Atrix is so interactive, right? It requires you to next through those steps. I mean, the only other way to do that, I mean, if you wanted to print them out, then we're talking about putting Atrix to the side, right? And I'm when I say brainstorming, that's definitely something. It looks like it's Denise. If you want to email me and then let me know who your consultant is, I can, and obviously I'm a consultant, but talk through that with them to see with your setup if it would be beneficial to go away from Atrix, but within Atrix, right? As far as e-filing, having them do the e-filing, just off the hip, I would say, even though you're going through one by one, and 300, yes, is a lot. This is not my final answer, but I would think, even though it's 300 times, that's easy for me to say, is that with them e-filing it and everything, point is 6 in one, half dozen the other, and maybe it's not that plain and simple. But yeah, shoot me an email on that one and let me know who your consultant is, and we'll talk through that to see. But I know there's not a macro within Atrix, but very totally get it. Respect what you're doing there, and we at ETHOSystems can absolutely see what our options are to make it happen. All right, so thank you for that. Yep, absolutely. I think there, without naming, yeah, I know there's a couple other clients on the call that are maybe 30 or 40, but yeah, 300, yeah, that's we'd want to use it for 30 clients, or vendors, or 300, either way. But yeah, let's see. But yeah, I know I'm repeating myself. Sorry, I'm starting to troubleshoot there. But yeah, there's no macro within Atrix, I know. All right, so here we would fill in the respective identifier in the text box here. Notice here, if I type in there, it says, hey, use the text box, right? So it's telling us what is the description for that respective field that we're pulling in. Earlier, my example was talking about COVID pays. This knowledge base article, when I say knowledge base article, back to the Sage City, if I go back over here to, I think it was, bear with me, maybe it was this guy here, this one, the COVID-19 legislation. Like I said, I'll send you these links. I know I'm repeating myself saying that, but here on this knowledge base, and when I say all clients are different depending on the setup, this knowledge base starts stepping you through. Example is if you had 16, or not, sorry, not 16, broke out COVID sick and family leave pay. Now, I'm not going to get all the details of each and every requirement, but it would be more of a consulting endeavor, if you will, in addition to obviously using your accountant and tax accountant, right? as the one that kind of give us the marching orders, right, to help you through the Sage side of things. But this one here, as you see, has all these different uh, formulas and all these different pay IDs for COVID. Now, again, not saying that even anyone on this call used those exact COVID pay IDs, right? And when I say that, there's this, I downloaded this before our call or leading up to this meeting. There's this PR COVID leave pay 2021 W-2 calculation report. I saved that report over on our demo server. I can absolutely send that report along. That being said, again, it's in the link, but let me open up Report Designer here. I'm going to quickly show this to you, and then I'm going to jump into the W-2s, but I think I saved it here, desktop, Matrix Forms, 20 year-end class, right here. Here's the COVID leave pay 2021, right? So when I say someone, not myself, I know we have another consultant. His name's Gary. If you've worked with him, I think he's created one similar but different, right? Meaning related to COVID pays. So if you have any specific reporting requirements, absolutely reach out to myself or our office, and we can determine who the best suited is to help, which could be me, but in addition to some of the work that's already been done, including this report, Gary didn't create, but this was from Sage. But notice if I click print, goes up the payroll transaction file, and notice here, right, this is in the mindset that the data, right, that you have set up is COVID sick. You, on your data, you may have set up a pay ID called, just for lack of a shorthand, right, COVID sick, right? Or maybe you didn't spell out COVID and just said CVD, right? Point is, we can modify this report through Report Designer to look at your respective pay IDs that you set up. But as you see here, this report talks about Q1 for 2021 and then Q2 through 3. And I'm not going to sit here and say, obviously I'm a Sage 300 consultant. I'm not going to sit here and say I could start rattling off, COVID legislation, right? Obviously things change all the time. But point is, I think it's right at the top of this. Where is it? I'll just kind of give you a key point here. Yeah, but employers will be required to report these amounts to employees either on Form W-2, Box 14, or in a separate statement provided with your Form W-2 to the employee. So I guess my point is with that is if you didn't set up specific COVID pays, right, then as it talks about is in a separate statement provided with the Form W-2 to the employees. But again, that gets back to talking with your tax accountant or your accountant and determining, what forms that he or she may have or know of to populate, again, in the mindset if you did not set up unique COVID, pay IDs. If you did set up unique COVID pay IDs, I guess my point with all this is that we do have a kind of a starting point, right? Starting point meaning what's over on the knowledge base, and looking at these examples, but I'm almost willing to bet, for lack of a better term, that you may not have done that exact pay ID, give or take a letter or what have you, and that's just simply getting a report designer to tell the report to look at the pay ID that you set up. Here, like I said, the sample data is, sorry, my mouth is getting dry talking for 1/1/15 to 12/30/1/15. Sample data is for the year of 2015. If I do print preview now, what you won't see here, which I just realized this the other day, is even though it's looking at pay IDs, right? The report is, well, sample data for payroll doesn't even have those pay IDs set up, and it's old. My point is, it's old sample data back to 15, but the report's sitting there. But I guess that's my point of why all these numbers are showing it, as 0 here. But it does total by employee. does still return the gross pay, right? Regardless if you set up COVID pays or not. But it does kind of give you a layout here of getting those employee totals. And if, with that being said, here's a report. Think of it like more of a preparation, or as it calls it, a calculation report. The thing is, then whatever those pay IDs are, I know I've went on this screen a couple times now, but then you could think of that as a preparation report, calculation report, but then that would fall in line with, in box 14, looking for those pays. And then that would, when I say that would pull in the respective data essentially off that report by employee and put it in your W-2s for employees. So because that was more of a, not 1,000-foot view, right? Kind of get a little bit into the details, but at least kind of explaining the idea behind that. But then that would be essentially, like I said, a consulting endeavor to talk through that with your consultant, whether it's me or someone else, and kind of go through that to help process your W-2s. So let's go into federal e-file and reporting. So here we have a new report, and again, on your system, by going into W-2s or 1099s, can pretty much guarantee you're gonna see. I think I already closed it out, but I apologize if I'm showing this to people that have already seen this, but promise you're gonna see these guys here. An update is available for Atrix. Again, you don't have to kick everyone out of the software to update it. It's just updating forms. You want to do automatic update, and then it'll start giving these messages about where it's updating the forms, and that's workstation specific. So if one user does it right, and then goes through that process, but then another one at another workstation does it, it's going to take the same amount of time. So that's a good preparation step to get out of the way. But point is, that's why we didn't see that here. All right, and then earlier on the call, like I said, what I'll do is I'll work on checking in with Atrix as far as the when they're going to release the 2021 form. Obviously, we're still December 14th, so still people are processing. So the Atrix most likely is waiting, from the IRS. When I say that, if you went out to the IRS and saw a 2021 form, then that's, change the story. But point is, Atrix is absolutely getting the information from the federal government and how they get the forms. Here, the sample data is in year 2015. But point is, obviously, once we go to do it, we would want to make sure that, may seem like a simple point, but make sure that don't do what I'm doing here. I'm doing it for our year-end class here, but the form, make sure it's 2021, and the year we're processing is 2021. I know someone asked earlier, I think that may have been Linda, about the upgrading to 20.5. Point is, even if you close the year and get into 2022, you would see 2022 here. All you have to do is go back to 2021 there. I do have to bring this up, even though it may not pertain, as especially from a year-end procedure, right? I know we just got in there. You're probably saying click next, right? But point is, talking about archiving clients, right? If an employee was let go or left or what have you for that given year, right? I have had clients even rush to archiving. When I say that, an archiving procedure should be something that would be end of January, maybe even into February, right? once you know that you've printed all your W-2s, your 1099s for that, for that prior year. So when I say end of January into February, maybe a better way to say that is just into February, right? After the cutoff dates, because my point is, I had a client, again, never named client names, but they did, hey, let's start moving checks for those employees that have already are gone and maybe they retired, right? Then they start moving current to history. And once you start moving transactions to history and then try to go print that W-2, it doesn't bring the numbers in, because Atrix looks at the current file. All right, it does not look at the history file. So I guess that's me stressing it, is before archiving for at least the prior year, don't start moving things to history until you've processed all your W-2 information. So let's click next here. Here it finds all the employees with that penny minimum. Here we'll click generate. And again, like I said, Atrix is very interactive. Like I said, make sure you do the form to the given year, right? So this is giving you a heads up saying, hey, wait a second, you're processing, the year doesn't match the form. But for W-2s here, again, you could do a test drive with all of your employees, even if it's on a prior form, waiting for that 2021 form. Here today, we're going to do the no thanks, and we're going to start processing. Here's our FEIN number. And then this guy, like I mentioned on the 1099 side, we do have, when I say many clients, plenty of clients, right, that do multiple data files for the EIN. So here, if you do this, what you'll want to do is let's say if you have, like I said, the dedicated office file, and then you have, and it's pointing back to the main file, data file for, GL, job cost, what have you. We'll want to go through this, and I'm going to quickly just point out that if we click yes, it brings up this screen here. And what we do is we say save, and then for that, what you would do is you would type in office, right? And that would be in the mindset that rather than Timberline Construction showing up here, it would say Timberline Construction Office Payroll, right? So we would name that file for those office employees, right? We would click OK. And this may not pertain to everyone on the phone, but I'm just going to do it real quick. See how here it found 51 employees, right? Now what you would do is you would click close. You would jump over to open company, right? Back in the mindset that we're jumping out of office, and we don't have it set up this way, but plenty of clients do. We jumped out of office, jump back to Timberline Construction. When I say Timberline Construction, such as like your field or your main data folder, we would do new report again, right? We click next, and even pointing this out for clients that have all their payroll W-2s in one data folder. There have been clients that never broke out their payroll into like an office or management salaries or whatever you want to call it, because they just knew it was just a headache, from the W-2 processing, right? It wasn't worth it because of the manual effort to break it out. So my point is, even though you don't have this set up currently in your system, anyone on this call, this is definitely something you can entertain. In the point of here, we just do next, Next, again, we use multiple payroll data files. Next, and now here, again, this one was in the mindset we were in the office, and let's say the office salaries, and let's say the employees showed 10, right? Now we're again doing our second pass through, but we're in the timberland construction. This would be in the mindset here, right? We would do field. Now this one's going to say 51 as well, right? Because in my scenario, we didn't have that office payroll broken out. But point is, this would show 10, this would show 51. Then we check both of these like I just did, right? And we click merge. And then it says, hey, are you sure you included all the payroll data files, right? We say yes. And now it's bringing these two data folders together. Now, notice this. I'm bringing this up because, again, I just wanted to show you that merge capability. But since it like I said multiple times on this call, Atrix is very interactive. Look what Atrix just did. Said, wait a second, we're trying to merge these duplicates. Do we want to merge them all? Right? Well, we don't, because I picked the same data folder simply because Office wasn't broken out. But it's recognizing that, we have the same, same employees here. It says click cancel to cancel the merge and manually resolve all duplicates in the payroll file. So if I click cancel, the point is that would bring in everyone. Like I said in my example, the 10 and the 51, so you would see 61. I'm going to click close here. Promise last run through here, and then we'll get through the W2 here. Now let's go away from that. I did want to point that out in case that was beneficial to anyone, which it very well could have been on the call here. Continue. So I start processing. Next, and then on this screen, right, we just walked through that process about creating two separate payroll data files, then selecting both of them and doing the merge. But if we just say, hey, no, we use a single payroll data file, right? Again, we have this information from our company information. We're filing for company employer. It does ask you to make sure that your state withholding number is in here, or your state unemployment number. I'm going to do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 1. This would be, again, another preparation to make sure you have that ready for you. Example copied was copied. Your account number the state account number should be entered in this screen as this. So it was recognizing I was using the example. So here, making sure you have the sample data is in Oregon here, at least for payroll purposes. So making sure you have your state withholding, your unemployment, any local tax items, which it will recognize if any local taxes were taken out in your data folder. If we click next, and we'll click OK. I think I need to put a 1 at the end there. Just make sure, as it says, properly formatted, which I was just making up numbers, right? Because I don't have my own tax account number. But point is, again, if I haven't said it enough, right? Atrix is very interactive, and again, that's why it's forcing you to go through all these steps here. Do you have any employees who are exempt? Say no. Members of the clergy, do we want control numbers on your W-2s? Yes or no? If you do control numbers, the control number could be the employee ID if you wanted, right? So if we say yes, and do you have any employees who elected to only receive W-2 forms electronically? More and more clients are saying yes, so that you can email them rather than have them wait for Atrix to send it. But point is, that's not, not required there. If we click next, here's a control number. Here is if I do 941. Here next. Again, for truncation, right? For Social Security, you may want to mask it there, whether you use X's or asterisks. Here, listing out all the employees, and earlier, like I said, whether it pertains to you or not, if we would have merged those two, obviously it said it found duplicates, so that's why I canceled out of there. But literally, once it merged, it would have brought us to this exact screen. And rather than see 51 employees, right, per my example, we would have seen all 61 here. So here, again, Atrix will go through here. It does highlight it in blue based on up here. If you look in the upper left, it says verify employee information. So it's not looking at any numbers over here to the right yet. So point is, you can drag this over a little bit. You can use the scroll bar down below. I will ask a question that no one asked on this call, which is totally fine, is can you export out of here? We can't export out of here. The first time someone asked that, I was like, and I think that was like the first or second or third year. I'm like, you got to be able to do that, right? Well, point is, Atrix, if you will, did all this work, right? So it got you to this. So it's not looking to be just a tool for you to, export and go do your W-2 somewhere else. So I did change my tone of view, or kind of my mindset, and said, yeah, that makes sense. But I guess that was my way with it. Unfortunately, whether you like it or not, which no one likes to hear that, right? You can't export out of this screen here. Here, if we click next, if you do have someone with the same social security number, which this sample data does not, but just for example here, 25, 61, 24, right? Let's say that retrieved from Sage here. If we click next, it will start giving you these messages. And now, obviously, everyone should have their own unique social security number. However, you will, when I say you will, maybe not, but there have clients that have had the same social security number for employees, and the reason being is, we'll pick on here Lori. If Lori worked, January, February, she was laid off, whatever reason, what have you, they didn't think she was coming back, and then they rehired her in October, or right towards the end of the year, but then they created a new employee ID, which not saying that they should have, but clients have, right, or thought it was a different person. Point is, you do have the option. It does let you, bear with me here, click next. I put those in it the same way. I thought there was a, now I'm putting my foot in my mouth. There was a way, unless they changed that, to merge them together, merge the records together. So like Sage, so if this Lori Becker was here and Lori Becker was here, and maybe it's because the names are different. I think if we maybe put the same name in there or the same information, that has to be it. Because I know I'm not making that up, even though point is, then you can merge those together. Again, that may not be something that would apply, but just kind of pointed out that at least it did recognize they had the same social number. Here, now it's starting to go off of the retirement plan, looking at the check boxes on the employee ID. Next, if we scroll over here to now we can move this scroll bar here. right? Now it's looking at federal wages, federal Social Security. And right here, this is where I think earlier on the call, what I was mentioning is that a Social Security wages for employee that the client downloaded the taxes for the new year, ready to go for the new year, but then they cut a check for the prior year, meaning like they added 3 or 4 hours on, and then but it was using the new tax table, which was 6.2% or 4.2%, vice versa. This is where Atrix stopped us in our tracks and said, hey, you got to go fix the data, right? And that's when we went and closed out of Atrix. We went into tasks, entered checks. We recorded a negative $8. I know I'm repeating this for most of you, if not all, but point is, this is the step where that scenario came up. And then when we went through Atrix, then it let us pass. So it is verifying all the limits and what have you. Here's our Oregon wages, Oregon tax. And I will point out earlier, which I know I've done this twice now, but I'm gonna just add to it. If you didn't have any pay IDs set up for COVID or any respective fields that you wanted in, this box, 14, right? Like I said, if we would have populated it in here and selected the respective COVID pay or whatever pays you wanted, point is, once we're over here, you would see, as you would hope, right? Just like it's pulling in box 12D here, you would see box 14. Sorry, I'm trying to resize my screen here. You would see box 14 show up. But you can get with your consultant or myself if you haven't set up those pay IDs. Look at point is, where's that here? Insert, I think it's up here. Edit columns, insert column. So then the new column name, and for lack of a better one here, I'm just going to say COVID, right? Default must be a number. This is 14. You can say box 14 other, right? Now I just put 14 all the way down here, but point is, if this should be 100, you can. This doesn't write. Obviously, no one's going to pay that much. That would be nice. That was my finger just kind of clicking around. But you can fill in here and put in amounts, and it will print in box 14 of your W-2, even though the data wasn't retrieved from Sage, right? Based on pay IDs that you may or may not have set up, but you can use all the other existing information, such as, gross base, taxes, and what have you, and add the box 14 into your grid. Hopefully that helps, or if that makes sense here. And here, W-2 options here, complete W-2 service, the $2.45. I think there used to be a cutoff date where it could be cheaper if you did it. Obviously today's December 14th, but I think maybe they haven't released that yet. But like once you start getting into January, that price per employee may go up. But point is, it shows you what it does, and it prints and mails employee copies. I know we have like about five more minutes to respect anyone's time as I'm clicking through here. I think hopefully these things are making sense. Pretty self-explanatory as far as some of these pieces here, but if I say print the employee ID number as control numbers, I guess my point is, if anyone, as we're going through this, if anyone has any additional questions they want me to look at, I absolutely can. But here's the cover page. Click next. Here are 13 pages as you see up here with the 4 up, and just like the 1099s, if you put the four part blank paper, then this will print the grid lines to that if you don't do the complete service. If you do the complete service, right, you don't need the 4 part because Atrix will be sending it. But point is, even like on a here print final or print copy for your own copy record, as if you had Atrix do it. Could you use the 4 part? Yes, but for your own internal copy, point is we can always go reprint W2s through the saved report once you go into Atrix. So here, if I click next, it just gives you a heads up. Hey, before you, if you were printing, put the 4 part perforated. It does give you a link to go to Sage CRE forums or call that. If you want to jot that down, or if you obviously follow up and let me know, or you can get 4 part blank paper at your local printer. Click cancel. Here up top, as you see here, the federal W2. Right, let's go there. Federal W2. This one has 26 pages because it has the two up here. Let's scroll through and see all the employees here. Here's that COVID-14, right? As we just manually entered, even though that 14 wasn't pulling, from the data. So that's kind of a slick thing with Atrix, allowing you to put in the numbers. But I mean, the idea is that you want to pull the data, from Sage. But with these box 14 and COVID pays, that may be a different story. Or even utilizing the report that I pointed out and utilizing the point and then using that report to give you the numbers that we want, right? And then pulling the data in there if you need to break it out accordingly. Let's do no there. Here's our W3. And then the last two should be, I believe, the state copy. The Oregon state copy. Again, 4 up. There's our 13 pages. Cancel. And then here's our, when I say here's our, Oregon has a specific WR report here, which I don't believe anyone on this call is from Oregon, but point is, Atrix would put out your respective state form at this part. Here I'm going to do 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0. Again, 0. We're going to say no. And then even the name. Remember earlier on the W2, I canceled out. I put in the contact name. So it caught up with me here, saying, hey, these are required fields, whether you enter them on the first screen or once we get to it. So here now, this is just saying, hey, all the numbers are complete. So obviously I've been clicking through here, but you want to make sure that we're at least agreeing to the numbers. Atrix takes the 100% liability on that. It's the most current form. And then here, just like I talked about, you log in, put in your credit card information, make the payment, and then Atrix will send you the AFID number and send you the AFID number so you can log in and track the status. So I know no. We'll close out of here. Well, thank you for everyone joining. I know it's 1 o'clock. We're going to end it right now unless I see a question pop up that has any year-end question that they have. Otherwise, you can always email me. I will make sure that these documents get out to everyone. So you have my email if you want to ask any questions after the meeting. So I don't see anything popping up. So I appreciate everyone's time, and hopefully everyone has a great rest of the year here, and maybe I'll be in touch with a number of you. So thank you so much.